The question is, did you get that bite in before the fanfare? Hi, welcome to Momentous Live
It's going to come out her nose.
Episode 77. That's right. I'm going to talk very slowly before I introduce myself, so next person up can introduce herself. Oh, teeth are looking good. I'm Tristan Jutra.
I'm Tasia Custody.
I'm William Silver. And I have a question for you, Tristan Jutra. Episode 77. What's the significance of 77?
Well, there's a certain space opera was released that year.
Yes.
I saw that in the drive-in. I think it may have been in Ontario. It's fuzzy memories when you're 6 years old.
I wasn't born.
I think only one of the three of us was actually born at that point. Star Wars, was that May 1977? Did it come out Memorial Day long weekend? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so. Just before summer. It was like one of the first big summer movies.
Oh, boy. Yeah, so episode 77, here we are. We've got me, Tasia, Will, and no Gray again, second week in a row. I don't think we actually acknowledged Gray's absence last week, so sorry about that. You still exist in our hearts, not in our stream. Hopefully Gray will be back next week. And next week, mark your calendars. Well, we haven't talked about this yet. We're going to do Wednesday instead of Tuesday because there's the September Apple event is going to be on Wednesday. And just to please your wife, Will, we're going to talk all Apple all the time because it's the iPhone event. There'll probably be Apple Watch update, maybe some other stuff too.
I might be away. We'll talk offline.
We'll talk offline. Yeah, yeah. Because if we wait 6 days, it's going to be old news.
Well, I'll come in from wherever I am.
Exactly. Just have a streaming setup on top of an old Coleman cooler.
Yeah.
And that should do the trick. Okay, so we've got interesting thing. We tried to do this episode with a special guest, second week running, and unfortunately said guest was not able to join us. Hopefully he'll be able to join us again sometime in the fall. Next time we talk about cars and or movies and or TV shows. But in the meantime, let's get into a little bit of follow-up. In the past, we've talked a couple of times about one of those types of vehicles that Will really wants to be the first person to try, and that's a flying car. And there's just a couple of little...
I'm not a pilot. Why am I going to get in one of these?
Yeah.
Well, there are more and more flying cars coming out, and this one is from Samson Sky, the creators of the Switchblade flying car. They've been working on this for about 14 years. There's a little video that we'll play here so you can feast your eyes on this here. We're looking at about $170,000 per vehicle, and over about 2,000 people have already put a deposit down on this. There's been all different shapes and sizes of flying vehicles. We've seen some are electric powered, some are gasoline powered. Some are working on autonomy. Some are working on having an actual pilot. Some are more plane focused. Some are more car focused. But one of the things mentioned in this particular article on the Next Web is some of the realities of flying cars that some of us might not be thinking about. Will, you mentioned you're not a pilot, surprisingly. But there's one of the other issues is, where do you take off and land from? Unless if you're talking about a VTOL, a vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, it's not so easy. You got to find somewhere where there's an official sanctioned air landing strip. So all of a sudden it makes the dream of convenience a lot less convenient. For example, where I live on the North Shore of Vancouver, there's really nowhere convenient to be taking off or landing a plane on. Perhaps from the water, if it was a float plane type situation that could also double as a car on the roads. It starts getting, it's like one of those things, like the reality of the situation doesn't really match up so much with the fantasy itself. Klein Vision, the clip is playing now. We talked about them last year, and we've got another little article also on the next web, talking about another startup that wants you to test its flying machine.
Oh, no.
And it's not so much
Oy.
car-like as it's somewhere like halfway between a car and a jetpack. It looks kind of like a quadcopter sort of thing, except instead of rotors, it has little jets, and it is known as the Jet Racer. So this would fall into the VTOL, the vertical takeoff and landing sort of vehicle. And it's powered by 10 kerosene-fueled micro turbo jet engines and controlled by 2 joysticks. So, Will, with all your gaming experience, it may suit you just fine. But Tasia,
Mm-hmm.
where you live, there's in Arizona, there's great wide open spaces.
Mm-hmm.
How much are you looking forward to the opportunity of perhaps having the ability to avoid gridlock, rush hour traffic, and the like, and maybe because there's a lot more open space, a bit more opportunities to take off and land, whether it's a VTOL or more of a type of vehicle that requires a runway. I think Will's a bit more cautious in this department, but you're a bit more adventurous, aren't you? You could do flips like this fella.
Oh my God.
Like a
Oh my God.
terrible roller coaster. Oh lordy. What I have question. So here's the thing that people need to understand is you do need a license. So that's another little hiccup. A regular driver's license is not going to cover you in the air. Who would have thought? On top of what Tristan's mentioning in terms of like where do you take off and land from? I mean, all of this would need to be regulated with like the FAA. So like there's flight patterns and things. I mean, it gets so convoluted and confusing. But let's pretend we figured all that out. My biggest issue would be I want an emergency system. Like, is there a giant parachute that's going to pop out of these things should something go wrong? Because I'm not a great flyer to begin with. A lot of fears. So it's just you and a bit of metal out there. And I just want to make sure
kerosene.
Right. I just want to make sure if something goes wrong.
Oh God.
There's an eject button for a soft, gentle landing.
Here's the thing to Tasia's point. First of all, that thing that we were looking at before looks like a video game chair with a couple of engines strapped to it.
Yeah, sure does, Bill.
And then the other thing is, so friend of the show, Ange, she used to be a firefighter, and I hate to butcher her story, but basically when she was doing some of the firefighting up north in the woods in British Columbia, she loved taking helicopters until she realized that a supervisor wasn't taking helicopters, and he said, "I don't take helicopters because if something goes wrong, you just fall." And she stopped being so keen about helicopters after that, because there's no wings to glide down.
No.
If engines go on a plane, you can you can sully yourself onto a water body or something if you're lucky. But these things, you're just a metal video game chair that's going to fall straight down, to your point.
This is what I'm saying. This is why I won't go in helicopters. They scare the poop out of me. So this is exactly that. You're right. It does look like a gaming chair with propellers or something attached.
So the Zapata Jet Racer, which you're referring to, that's not their first rodeo in this department. They had something previously called the what's it called? The flyboard, which is more akin to a sort of rocket pack, except the rockets are underneath the feet. And in both of these cases, I could see if you're wearing a parachute that you have some options there. In the other sort of flying car situations, you would need more of a conventional, like a
parachute need time
button
to work though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like the movies where you pull it like 5 feet before the ground and you're okay. Like there's a zone where it doesn't slow you down fast enough before you break both your legs and your pelvis. So that's something to consider as well.
All right. Well, if we're not going to convince you guys to get into flying cars anytime soon, maybe we should we've got a roundup of a number of mostly EVs that we've been collecting. It's one of our recurring topics here on Momentous Live, in addition to things like space and gadgets and science and animals and disgusting things. And then we also, after we're done talking about EVs,
Mixers.
we're going to get into some upcoming movies and TV shows as well. What did you say, Will?
Mixers. That's the other thing.
Oh, yes.
I got a
yeah.
mixer story, by the way. I don't know if it'll make it onto the show, but I can tell it at the end.
Oh, okie dokie. All right, so let's start off with I'll just do a high level headline overview of some of these, and then we can dig into the ones that appeal to the two of you the most here, and we can dig a little deeper into those. So we've got the 2022 Audi Q4 e-tron electric crossover that's been worth the wait. And you can see, wow, it almost looks like a normal vehicle. It's not trying to be too fancy. It's built on the same platform as the Volkswagen ID.4. And looks perfectly respectable. It doesn't look like it's from outer space, like some of the stuff that Kia and Hyundai have been doing with very futuristic looking vehicles. So that's one. Another, we've got the Mercedes EQB, which some sites are starting to get some first drives in. Another sort of crossover. It's being positioned as an SUV, so it's got a little bit more room than your typical crossover. And this is, even, slightly more upmarket than, say, the Audi is. But again, looks like a reasonably conventional Mercedes-Benz with, slightly swoopier. The edges filed off just a little bit for extra aerodynamics. So that's the Mercedes EQB. Then we've got another Mercedes that can go 747 miles on a single charge. And this is known as the Vision EQ XX, which is, one of these, halo cars, I would say, more in the supercar, quasi supercar category. And, it almost has a little bit of almost like Lotus sort of vibes to it.
I was going to say the front is a Porsche.
Yeah, from the front view, looks very like the some of the new electric and hybrid Porsches that have been coming out. But the rear end it actually looks a little bit like the Kia EV6, which itself looked a little bit like some of the Priuses, which I don't think are a great looking rear end, but they do that for the the aerodynamic aspects of it. And I can't see a price on this particular one, but I'm sure this one is not going to be cheap. So that's another one. Then we've got a 2023 BMW iX xDrive 50. So here's one where it kind of looks normal-ish, but again, it's got that, in my opinion, terrible new style BMW front end where they've just taken the kidney grills and and just done that Photoshop thing where they just make them bigger and bigger until it gets totally ridiculous. That's looking at about 84 grand US, and with some of the reviews praising the responsive electric motors and, of course, great efficiency and design. But in the interior, still kind of weird looking. And it's got that bit of a BMW premium still, even though BMW, in my mind, has kind of sullied their brand in a lot of ways over the years because they have so many models and so many, like sort of lower end cars. They're not rare or special anymore. And I think even though Teslas aren't cheap, like here in the Vancouver area, they're so common.
Yeah.
And some of these brands have to be careful of oversaturation, especially in the case of Tesla, when they're almost all of them are white. And if you're lucky, you'll see one that's black or gray, or someone's got a wrap and it's got some sort of more special color. But look at the front end on this Beamer. It's come on, guys.
I kind of like it.
Different strokes.
Yeah. I think it kind of looks techie, but maybe that's me. It's because it's angular.
Oh man, it looks like freaking gerbil teeth.
It's got bug eyes. Yeah.
No, I can't unsee that.
And what else we have here? The new Meyers Manx 2.0 electric dune buggy that can go up to 300 miles and go from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Now we're talking. Look at this. This is what was that on the wasn't there something on the Croft Super Show back in the 70s? I know I'm dating myself. They had some
Speed Racer.
Well, no, there was Speed Racer, the cartoon, but there was this other one. There was a live action thing with a dune buggy that was just kind of mesmerizing and nightmarish at the same time. But this thing looks pretty cool. Like I said, range of it's good and torquey, range of 300 miles, limited quantities at the moment. But we're seeing, also in addition to the mainstream vehicles that we've been talking about for, over the last year and a half or so, we also peppered in with these sort of like specialty sort of vehicles that we've looked at some of Jeep's offerings and some of the electric motorbikes and the like. Here's another one that's a bit of more of a concept car from Hyundai called the Envision 74. It's got retro supercar styling and a high performance hydrogen fuel cell plug-in hydrogen hybrid powertrain. And look at this. I mean, this has got a little bit of DeLorean vibes to it, kind of mixed with something else. It's got a giant spoiler, and the headlights are similar to Hyundai's the Ioniq 5, so they're doing like the pixel headlight sort of treatment on there.
It looks like peak 1980s,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the other thing is it's DeLorean mixed with everything about the 80s.
Yeah, like it could have been in a scene in the Wedding Singer, right? Like when he gets really drunk and like remember that whole scene where like the fiance pulls up in the car anyway. But like this could be the car.
So let's see if we've got anything else lined up here. Oh yeah, BMW and Toyota are teaming up on a new hydrogen-powered SUV. This isn't going to come out until 2025, and still, not a real product yet. But BMW has been working on hydrogen stuff for quite a while. Toyota has been doing like the hybrid gas electric for a while, and don't have much in the way of pure electrics until recently. And so they're kind of behind in that game, but the two of them teaming up on hydrogen, people haven't given up on hydrogen yet because it doesn't require the same amount of, they say, lithium as in all these battery packs we're needing in electric cars. So hydrogen is it's in some ways, it's more like a traditional fuel that you have to keep in a tank. It's sort of just highly compressed hydrogen. The issue being there's not a lot of hydrogen fuel stations around. I think there's 2 or 3 in the Metro Vancouver area, for example, and there's not that many hydrogen cars. Like the Toyota Mirai is around, and that was made, I think, as a compliance car in California, and some of them have made their way up to Canada. And then there's some fleet vehicles, hydrogen fleet vehicles, but hydrogen could be one way for us to take the pressure off of lithium mining, which, just trying to get all the lithium we need for all the battery packs for cars that they want to make over the next couple of decades. Some places wanting to phase out internal combustion engine cars by either 2030 or 2035, depending on your jurisdiction. So out of these ones we've looked at so far, we've got our Audi Q4 e-tron. We've got our Mercedes EQB, this the Mercedes Vision EQXX, and our BMW Abomination iX xDrive 50. Great name, guys. And the Meyers Manx electric dune buggy, the Meyers Manx 2.0, our Hyundai Envision concept, and our BMW and or Toyota hydrogen power SUV. If someone put a gun to your head and asked you to pick one of these, which would it be, Tasia?
Hydrogen powered SUV. Oh. So as an aside, hydrogen is making like big waves in terms of like sustainable aviation fuel as well. So we're going to see a lot coming up with that in terms of like some flights already are kind of like a mix of different sustainable fuels, many of them using hydrogen. So this seems to me to be the next step more on that like consumer level, if we can just figure out how to make it convenient like our gas powered cars are now. So this definitely would be my pick. I also want to caution people that when you're looking at any car, I love the quality of like a German-made vehicle like an Audi and a Mercedes. They are notoriously extremely expensive to maintain and to fix should you need to, I don't know, replace a part or something. So just as a heads up, if money's an issue, whereas something like Toyota and like BMW teaming up, I mean, they've got production in multitude of countries, so you can get parts a little easier, and it brings that maintenance and like lifetime spend of the car down a little bit. Who knows what we'll pay for hydrogen, but
Well, yeah, I saw some videos on it, on some, I think the Toyota Mirai, for example. And if I recall correctly, I think we were looking at about half of the cost of gasoline. I could stand to be corrected there. Whereas right now with electric, again, depending on where you are, it's about 20% of the cost of gasoline to go the same number of, the same amount of distance, miles or kilometers there. Of course, one of the big challenges with hydrogen is, as mentioned, the infrastructure. And the thing with electric is that with lots of folks, especially if they are in a single family home, or if they're in a multifamily situation like an apartment building, condos, townhouses that has the hookups, you just top up when you're at home, right? You don't even have to go to stations anymore. Mm-hmm. So with hydrogen, it's really, if we can get traditional gas stations to start offering hydrogen, then you're going to have these parallel sort of sets of infrastructures, parallel pumps, tanks, all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of investment going to be required there. That actually reminds me of, in the city of Vancouver, is it by next year or the year after, they are insisting that all gas stations in Vancouver have to provide a certain number of electric recharging stations, or they will be fined $10,000 per year, I believe. Which, and it's like, okay, guys, it's like over $100,000 to get those things set up. So, I mean, not that there's a ton of gas stations left in the city of Vancouver. There's only one left in downtown Vancouver on the peninsula at this point. But anyhow, but yeah, hydrogen, the infrastructure is the big thing there. But I mean, I still, like it for certain applications. Like we said, where you have the infrastructure, whether it's fleet vehicles or, as you mentioned, potential for aviation, if the energy density is there. And so we'll see. It's just a question. The market's going to decide the unit economics for the fuel itself and the production of the vehicles. But the behavior-wise, people are used to going and filling up their vehicles. But people who have gone to electric would find it hard to then switch to hydrogen, because then all of a sudden your convenience factor is gone. So yeah,
but it's going to be interesting because it's, like you spoke about jurisdictions and what they're doing, in the future, and like California is one of them. I mean. To put it in perspective, California is bigger than the entire country of Canada, and it's like, population-wise, and they're going to ban the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035. So, you can drive them, of course, after that. You'll be grandfathered. You're not going to be taken off the road, but it's like.
And used cars will still be bought and sold in the meantime.
Yeah. But like, this is the type, it sounds so extreme to people, but it's like, this is the type of stuff that, if every state started doing this, if every province started doing this, it's like it forces politicians and people that have the money and the power to make the better decisions. So it's like, at the end of the day, we all have to remember, like, as consumers, we do hold power. And if we show by where we put our money, that is always the driving force. So that's my tirade on that.
And those with the disposable income, again, a lot of this is starting at the top of the market. Though, the more of those folks who buy these sorts of vehicles, it helps, drive the economies of scale and drive the prices down for, lower parts of the market to make it more accessible. And that's really important for folks too, because it's not just for people with, lots of money. So you've got these subsidies that they're in place, and some of these subsidies actually don't exist for cars over a certain price threshold. Like in Canada, I believe it was they were only for vehicles 55K and under, and if it was over that, it's like, well, you've got enough money to burn, so you don't need a subsidy. I think they've since increased that to 75K, but I mean, there's that whole, privilege, check your privilege kind of side of things as well, and class divide and whatnot. So we just want to make sure that we're trying to move people along, that it's affordable for those, and there's the incentives, whether it's the subsidies or incenting the automakers, and then maybe reducing subsidies for oil industry and whatnot. But there's going to have to be transitions there. Like oil and gas aren't going away for decades. No. They still serve it. You can't make for example, you can't make steel without coal, right? So even coal is going to be around. But this diesel for trains. I mean, they've got electric trains, but there's a lot of like applications that still that hydrogen and electric aren't going to suit quite yet. And then this still requires resources like lithium to make these batteries and whatnot. This is, but they say the recent. I read a study recently talking about the total carbon footprint of an electric vehicle versus an internal combustion engine, a gas-powered vehicle, because that's been a lot of the debate, the whole life cycle in it. And from what I understand, it's about half. Again, I stand to be corrected on that, but it is far less. When they actually look at all the numbers. So some people are saying, well, it's actually electric cars have a larger carbon footprint. It's like, well, when you dig into the details, and then it all depends on your methodology and whatnot.
Right, and because their argument is the mining issue and everything that goes into making and storing batteries and such. So yes, you can get into the weeds on that. There are some people that are firmly in that category that it's worse or the same.
I mean, you got to extract fuel. You got to extract oil and refine it and ship it and as well. So it's complicated. Will, what's your perspective and/or your pick out of these?
Well, I think first, just to chime in on what you guys are talking about. I mean, here's the thing: you go to a regular, consumer person buying a car, driving a car, medium income, whatever. Do you love gasoline? Is it important that your automobile works on combustion? No, people just like cars. They like motors. They like things that move, that get them to A and B, to carry wood, to take their kids camping, whatever it is, on a plane to fly to Toronto or Arizona or wherever it is. They don't care about gasoline. So, I mean, the thing is, if we can work out a better way of making it happen and have the infrastructure, I mean, that was one of the things they talked about in Who Killed the Electric Car, was that the number of gas stations or places to refuel, it's almost like it's an upward battle for hydrogen to try to replace it and make it more convenient for people. Because the thing is, if you got it as ubiquitous as gas stations, people might not care, especially if it was cheaper. They probably would go for hydrogen if all things were considered, because they don't really love gasoline. There's nothing about gasoline that they love, although I guess some people like the smell because they've got a problem. But regardless, I mean, nobody loves gasoline. If there was a better solution, then people would jump to it, regardless of whether it's better. That's just what we
have, Will.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, would you rather be in a horse-powered buggy?
Yes. Yeah.
This is how we've so this is just the next transition. And
you should check out the exhaust from horses. Not pretty.
Yeah. So we just need to make it optimal for people to make the plunge, right? That's the thing. But how do we get past the infrastructure of gasoline, of gasoline stations, of gasoline cars, of everything being built around gasoline? People who fix cars are used to fixing gasoline engines. Now, electricity has a good bet on it because everyone has electricity flowing around us. It's just getting the station to convert it into a way that can get into a car. But we don't have hydrogen hanging around. I hope not. In our backyard. So, I mean, technically it's floating around. But, I mean,
it's
actual
the most
hydrogen
element in the universe, right?
Yeah, hydrogen that you could put in your car is not readily available. Yeah. So,
and it takes energy to gather and compress.
Yeah,
and
you burn coal, don't you? Or you often have to burn some sort of energy to get it.
Yeah,
so
it depends what's plentiful in your area. So
electricity seems like it's kind of a better bet because we're already using it to power our homes and do other things. We just need to get it into a way that can get into our cars. Yeah. I have a neighbor who's got like an electrical cord across the street with like a piece of plastic over top of it, like that's gonna help. But yeah, they've got the was it the Ionic or something? Anyways, so nice. Not to dox myself if you figure out where there's an Ionic in East Van.
Well, I'm tracking them on the Hyundai app right now.
Yeah. But anyways, so I've kind of gone on for a while, but I think that's the thing that we got to remember is no one loves gasoline who doesn't work in the oil industry. So if we could just come up with something, work out the logistics, as you were saying, Tristan, whether it's hydrogen or electric, I think we have a good shot at
Yeah.
replacing the whole infrastructure, but it's going to take time, to your
Yeah,
point.
and it could be both, right? We have gasoline, we've got diesel, and we've got propane, like as the legacy fossil fuels for powering different types of vehicles. So there's no reason why we couldn't have electric and hydrogen going forward. I was chuckling to myself when you mentioned about people getting cars to like haul wood around. I'm like, oh, that's not the first use case that would come to my mind. But then I just realized last night and also last Thursday night after roller hockey, when I was driving up Keith Road on the way home, it's like at the side of the road there was someone had put in their front yard about 3 or 4 big buckets of leftover wood from doing like ends of 2x4s and 2x6s and smaller pieces and like free, and they also said please don't take containers. And I'm like, and so I loaded up my car with literally a bunch of wood in my EV. So not that it's great to not that it's great to burn wood because of the particulate matter, but we do have a wood burning fireplace because we like to do our part for asthma. And
everything we do now, there's like this social consciousness to it. We can't enjoy anything.
Yeah. So I'm looking at actually eventually replacing our standard wood burning fireplace with a what's known as an airtight, a high efficiency wood burning fireplace, because I like having multiple sources of energy. We've got natural gas, we've got electricity, but if you get a Texas situation like they had a year and a half ago, where their grid went down and in ice storms and whatnot, and what if our electricity and or our gas went down, and if our electricity went down, our gas furnace wouldn't work because the fan wouldn't blow. So unless you got
take your daughter to Mexico, that's the solution.
Exactly. Is that take your daughter to Mexico day? It's like take your daughter to work day.
Yeah.
So
it's all her fault.
Yeah. So that's why we're hanging on to this sort of legacy fuel. But if everyone was burning wood all the time, that wouldn't be great because of the particulate matter and air quality. So in Metro Vancouver, you can't burn in wood burning fireplaces after May 15th until I think the end of September or something like that. So anyway, that's a long way of getting back to you, Will, to say of those vehicles that we spoke about, which one speaks to you?
Okay, Tristan, you know me well. What do you think I'm going to choose?
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up, and then we're gonna see if it's the one.
This is a fun little game. How well does
this one?
Yeah, it's totally that one.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the car that's not real, but it's the Hyundai Envision hydrogen fuel cell hybrid that looks like a DeLorean, but cooler, and even kind of cooler than that newfangled DeLorean that they resurrected. But it's a Hyundai. Well, are you okay with that?
Sure. I think it looks kick-ass. I love the wheels. Something about the wheels I really like.
It's cool.
One of the interesting things with this as well is they've really tying it into, and this is something I wasn't familiar with, but they're tying it into the pony backstory. Like, because I remember the Hyundai Pony, like in 1986 here in Canada, being like this basically a underpowered rust bucket.
My mom had one. She loved that car. She used to call it My Little Pony.
But apparently the Hyundai Pony heritage goes back to the 70s, and where it was actually a decent and reasonably well respected car in South Korea. So it's worth reading up on that. I learned a bit about the pony heritage there. So this is basically taking that, because a pony car, I mean, like if you look at the Mustang, the whole idea, like it's the horse is the logo, right? People talk about pony cars and how many like horsepower, how many these ponies want to gallop, all that kind of stuff. That's where the pony came from. It wasn't just like some dumb random name. Anyway, so
carriageless horse is what it was, or horseless carriage.
Horseless
carriage. Yeah.
I mean, so okay, I agree. I think that's the one to get, even though it's not real yet. It's cool because I mean, so all three of us are on the hydrogen train. This one being a hydrogen hybrid. It's just, this is the aspirational car. I mean, and if it ever comes to market, we shall see. Now, if I had to choose one of the, like a realistic option here, I don't even know. I mean, this Benz is kind of cool looking. I mean, again, we don't have a obvious price on it, so.
Oh, money is no object when we're fantasizing.
Sure, of course,
cars.
money. Well, just in general, right? If you're bad with money. Okay, so let's move on to, because it's 7:39 Pacific time here, and we said we were also going to talk about some movies and TV shows. There's been lots and lots of trailers coming out over the summer, but let's start with a little story. It's kind of in the transportation theme here, and that is Top Gun Maverick still won't stream as $20 home digital sales take off. So, yeah, so you can do a digital purchase, digital download of Top Gun Maverick, depending on where you're getting it from, maybe in the $20 to $30 range. But it did so well in the theaters, they are in no rush to bring it to streaming. Now, did either of you guys see Top Gun Maverick in the theaters?
I didn't. My wife and I are still not going to theaters.
Oh, Tasia doesn't like Tom Cruise. I think maybe we talked about that a little bit. Just if you can put that aside, you owe it to. I mean, it's a good old-fashioned Hollywood blockbuster movie. I was like, I had low expectations. I think we talked about this a bit. I rewatched the original. I'm like, okay, this is a thing that happened, and it's very of its time. But this is, I think, even better. And there's a reason why it's doing so well in the theaters, and the reason why they're not in any rush to get it to streaming. And so they'll probably actually have it where you pay to rent it first to stream, and then maybe Christmas time or so it'll eventually show up on free streaming services, probably starting with Paramount Plus, I believe, if it's a Paramount movie like the original one was. But if you can see this in the theater, I would recommend it because it's that visceral experience. Very little CG, lots of practical effects.
Is it still in theaters?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. And you get to see dudes with no shirts on playing volleyball. I mean, what more could you ask for?
I do like the sounds of that. I'll be quite frank.
There we go. And in related news, Avatar, the original, is coming back to the theaters, but it's going away from Disney Plus. So that's some of that jiggery pokery we see sometimes in with movie distribution. Just when people get excited about something, hey, it's time to make it so you can't watch it for free. But it would, I got to admit, when I saw Avatar for the first time in the movie theaters, it was the spectacle. It was very well done 3D. It was more, for me, more about the depth than the poking you in the face type of 3D. The story itself, as I think we've discussed, is kind of like warmed over Fern Gully. And I didn't really like a lot of the CG itself. The 3D was well done, but the CG itself just felt off to me. I wasn't a big fan of the character design of the Na'vi. They don't seem to have changed or improved all that much. It's looking at the trailers for the new Avatar movie, which comes out Christmas time. So my question to you, starting with you, Tasia, if not Top Gun, are you at all interested in the upcoming Avatar movies? And would you, to get back up to speed, be interested in seeing the original in the theater again before the new ones hit the theaters? The next 4.
May I confess I never saw the original?
Well, now's your chance.
Okay.
I know, right? Now's my chance. You guys know this just so is not up my alley of what I want to spend my money on and go into a theater for. So it's it's a hard sale for me. It's a hard sale.
So, now, what if they had a number of Na'vi there, a number of male Na'vi, and then the female Na'vi had a single rose that she had to give? Would that entice you in? Or what if they flipped it around and it was they had a number of female Na'vi and they had one male Na'vi that had a single rose to give?
I mean, I've also never watched The Bachelor or Bachelorette out of principle, so...
I'm sorry to make that assumption about you.
Says the girl who watches Selling Sunset, but that's okay.
Okay, there we go.
I have my hierarchy of shows.
So if they were buying property...
Real estate? Woo!
All right. I'm getting you sorry, I was getting you confused with my sister, because you're you feel like a little sister to me in some ways. And given the fact that my sister lent you her sweater, her ugly Christmas sweater that one time years and years ago. So you're firmly in the non-bachelor or bachelorette camp, but you're in the real estate reality show camp and not in the Avatar camp per se. That should make our next little sequence a little interesting. But Will, real quick, Avatar, you want to see it in the theaters again before the next 4 movies come out?
Not the original. I'll see the new one. I love the mechs. Other than that, the 3D was probably the best 3D in theaters, but that's not saying a lot. I like you. Fern Gully's interesting. I would have said it was Dances with Wolves with Blue Smurfs.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, not my favorite franchise. I remember you and I and a bunch of other people went and saw it. That's the first time I saw it. And when we were waiting in line, because it was like just a bonkers lineup, and you had to like book your time and everything. Somebody just coming out came up to us and said, "If I could buy your ticket and go right back in, I would." I was like, "Whoa!" And then I watched it, and I'm like, "What the hell was that person watching?" And I remember the Totally Rad show, which we were fans of too. It said like The Godfather, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Avatar. And again, I'm like, what did you guys watch? Because that was not what I saw. But, you know, it was okay. I'm a sci-fi guy, so I'll watch any of it. I'm sure I'll watch that, but I'm not the biggest fan. So I kind of downloaded a bunch of Avatar stories there. But, yeah, so I'll see it, the new ones, but...
Okay.
Not so my most beloved franchise.
I'm a little bummed about this tactic though, because I wouldn't have minded at least rewatching it at home on a decent,
yeah. Well, you do that, right? I do that too a lot. So
yeah, but they're taking it off of Disney Plus, right? Like I don't know if it's still like what the date was. It said that they were taking it off.
They often do that on Shaw on Demand for stuff as well. If there's something coming out, they take like all the Bond movies come off when the new Bond's coming out or something like that.
Yeah. So here's something on the opposite end of the spectrum. The Halloween Ends, which is the latest Halloween movie, and is it actually directed by John Carpenter? I think it might be.
Really?
It's going to be just like Halloween Kills. It will be in streaming and the theaters at the same time. So... because like Tasia, there are some people who just maybe aren't comfortable in going to the theaters yet, but it will be released on Peacock in the U.S. on October 14th, which is when it's coming to the theaters as well. So that's kind of an interesting twist. I mean, all these movie studios are trying to figure out what makes sense for each movie, like buzz-wise and whatnot. Like there's something to be said for the collective experience for watching horror movies, right? Mm-hmm. I find that horror is scarier in a theater. I find comedy is funnier in a theater. There's that whole notion of collective effervescence that you kind of miss out when you're at home staring at your phone half the time and missing half the plot. So we'll see. It'd be interesting to see if this gambit pays off, because if there's enough buzz from the streaming viewers, it might translate into theater ticket sales and possibly vice versa. Neither of you guys are huge horror fans, I know. So,
I love like anything Halloween themed in general, but I get extremely scared at like my own shadow. So I stopped pretty much watching scary things like years ago, except like to me, Stranger Things is like about as far as I go in terms of like, because I get so creeped out, like. And then I can't sleep. I can't look in the mirror because, like, if you wash your face and then you look up, there's going to be somebody behind you in the mirror. Like, it's just, I cannot go there.
Yeah.
So I'm a scaredy cat.
Yeah, I'm with Tasia, and that's a no for me, dog. I'm not into this at all. And like, the thing is that I'm trying to sort of vibe off of what Tasia just said. I like some, like, scary, like, creepy things, but not scary. I can't be worried about people's deaths. So even things like I don't know, like some zombie stuff, like Walking Dead was more about the interaction between people. I wasn't as worried about the zombies all that much, especially when you get into later seasons. Yeah. But there's some other stuff, like you say, Stranger Things, sort of it tiptoes on the line. Like there's some things, Ghostbusters, tiptoes on the line. It's more funny than it is scary, So for those things, I like. But I know, Tristan, you say things like splatter porn and stuff like that, or all that stuff that's just about killing, like Hostel and The Hills Have Eyes. Zero interest. But even things like Freddy Krueger, Halloween, not a lot of interest. So I mean, I like sort of creepy things, but they have to be either funny and not emphasize the scariness. That's just me. So
yeah, not a huge fan of the gore. I'm with you guys to a large extent. Like just straight up conventional horror or slasher picks or torture porn, not really my bag either. I dig creepy, I dig thrillers, psychological thrillers, suspense thrillers, and things that could be classified as horror, like a lot of what you were seeing on A24, the studio. They do a lot of neat stuff. Some of the like Men, for example, and then stuff like what Jordan Peele has been doing with his oeuvre so far. But Halloween is a classic. Is a classic franchise, and I think it's smart that they're bringing it to an end. But do these franchises ever really end?
I thought it ended a while ago, and they had a resurrection. So, but
Jamie Lee Curtis is back. So
two more things that I'll say. Sorry, now that I love
never apologize. Well,
okay, I love movies and TV. The other two franchises that are a bit of an anomaly is Predator and Aliens. Now, they did some Aliens, like Aliens versus Predator was almost like a straight up horror movie and just about murdering people. But if those ones like Aliens, Alien and Aliens are classics, and you could say that they're, I don't know, sci-fi horror, but those
especially
are
the
ones,
first one.
but those ones for me are exceptions. But again, it's hard to quantify it, where it crosses the line. So
right, gotcha. So real quick, then the two of you, if someone forced you to watch Halloween, the whatever this one's called, Halloween Ends, and would you choose to watch it in the theater? You had to in the theater or at home on a decent sound system, a decent screen, and not be able to look at your phone to distract yourself. Which would it be? Would you go just all in on the experience, or would you stay in your cave?
I think I'd have to go to a theater because I watch a lot of true crime and stuff, but I can't watch it in the dark or by myself in the house because I would be so freaked out if I watched this at home.
Well, so that's
there's that enough physical space between the theater and the house where maybe I could go get a treat afterwards or try not to think about it for an hour before bed or you know what I mean? But gotcha. I don't know.
There's that abstraction layer there. That's a good point. So now we figured out how to get Tasia back into the theater.
Yeah,
just force her to watch something. Force her to watch the documentary Halloween Ends. True crime.
True crime, exactly.
Will, how about you?
I think probably in the theater just because I could eat candy and convince myself to go in that way. But again, I'd have to be forced to go. I also just want to give a brief story that I was 6 years old and my siblings took me to the movie Gremlins, and my brother's 8 years older than me. And that was super scary. I literally watched everything but the first 5 minutes with just covering my eyes. And so I just sat in the theater for 2 hours covering my eyes. So I have visions that's what I do during this movie and just eating popcorn or what have you. So.
Yeah, Gremlins is kind of freaky, especially for young.
For kids. I was 6.
Okay, so we've gotten into some of those issues that we discussed about, distribution and releases and, home streaming versus theater and whatnot. Now we're just going to do a speed run through a number of trailers for movies and TV shows, many of which were previewed at Comic-Con San Diego 2022, which I believe was in July. We didn't get a chance to talk about these yet for various scheduling reasons, but we're practically at the end of summer now. So we're, like I said, just going to do a quick overview. And again, kind of like we did with the vehicles, I want you each to pick one or two that appeal to you most, intrigue you most about this. And Tasia, I know it's going to be a little tricky because you're not as deep into the nerd world lore as per the title of the show, but there might be something
nerd
in there.
Nerd world lore, I love that. So,
yeah, flicks and cars and the nerd world lore. You know how hard I work on these titles, guys.
You are a wordsmith.
So here we go. John Wick 4, featuring
John Wick 4, the wickiest. Well, what's the subtitle on that one? He wicks harder. What is it?
Wick, yeah, exactly. So we've got John Wick 4. We've got Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So that's the Shazam sequel. We have in the Shazam universe, we've got Black Adam starring The Rock. We have Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which starts, that's the TV series. So these first few so far have been movies. TV series, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power on Amazon Prime. That is starting in 2 days, I believe September 1st. So kind of a prequel to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I think it's using the Silmarillion as some of the source material. We talked about She-Hulk Attorney at Law last week, and that's been pretty fun so far. Wakanda Forever, which is basically Black Panther 2 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is a thing that is happening, apparently. Star Trek Picard Season 3. Who knows? Disney's doing another National Treasure movie, the National Treasure Edge of History. Because
is that a TV show? I thought it was a TV show.
Spin-off. It's a spin-off on Disney Plus. So yeah, it's a series.
Yeah.
Look at that. And I guess we don't have any Nicolas Cage here. Huh. Teen Wolf, the movie. Well, there was a movie previously, but Hollywood's out of ideas, so we got to do another Teen Wolf movie.
They did a reboot TV show that was horrible.
That's why they're calling this one Teen Wolf the movie now.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones: House of the Dragon, which premiered Sunday before last. We are 2 episodes in on this, and we might talk about that a little bit later. The Sandman on Netflix. So House of the Dragon is on HBO. Sandman, a series, is on Netflix. I've heard good things about that so far. I haven't started watching it yet, based on the Neil Gaiman book. And I Am Groot on Disney Plus. That's a series, I guess.
Yeah.
Haven't had a chance to look at that one that closely. Marvel's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. And Tales of the Walking Dead. Because that's what we need, is more Walking Dead content, because 3 TV series and an upcoming movie wasn't enough. And then another Walking Dead, Tales of the Walking Dead, 6 different characters. Okay, that's the same. And then Dragon Ball Superhero.
No thanks.
Never been a Dragon Ball Z follower myself. Barbarian, the story behind Barbarian. It's a horror movie, but be careful about staying in Airbnbs. Little Demon, animated series.
This is supposed to be funny.
Adult
it's from
comedy.
Like Danny DeVito and
right. There we go. And Resurrection, mystery of what is this? Dragon Prince? Yeah. Oh yes, Dragon Prince, another animated series, season 4. And then we got Interview with a Vampire, so the Anne Rice story, but instead of a movie, we got a series. Sorry, I've got to stop something here. What's happening? Anne Rice passed away last year, I believe. So that's going to be on AMC. Season 3 on Apple TV Plus. I didn't even get through season 1, and they're already at season 3. So that one's with Jason Momoa, also known as Aquaman. It was interesting. There was filling a bit of the Game of Thrones gap after Game of Thrones ended, but I didn't get into it quickly enough before. Now we've got more Game of Thrones and now the Lord of the Rings that we were talking about. Also, not from Comic-Con per se, but there have been wanting to talk about this for weeks now. The official trailer for Andor, which is the upcoming Star Wars series on Disney Plus. We talked about it briefly several months ago, and it has some Rogue One vibes, which I know is exciting a few of us, including myself. But Diego Luna is reprising his role as Cassian Andor. And real quick, a couple more things. Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon is again, it's nice to see some different sort of stories, ones that we might be familiar with thanks to previous movies or TV shows. This one starts Kate Hudson, and looks like it's about a young woman who escapes hospital confinement while displaying some particularly potent powers of persuasion. So we'll see what that comes to. Amazon Rings of Power. So they released the trailer just before the Game of Thrones House of the Dragon premiere. So Rings of Power, as mentioned, is starting on September 1st. Okay, I know that's a lot, but let's start with you, Tasia. Of all those, which are admittedly tend to be in the fantasy or sci-fi or nerdy, geeky kind of genres, anything there catch your attention?
I want to watch Little Demon because I watched an interview with Danny DeVito where he talked about it, and it sounded like a really funny show. So that's what I would watch. It's like an adult. It's like an adult animated show. It is not for kids. Apparently, it's like really dirty and would not be appropriate for children. So
that's all it takes to get you into the animated geeky TV series. It's just a lot of dirty
potty
jokes.
humor. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. As for myself, well, Will is furiously
I'm
thinking.
Ready. I'm ready.
You're ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are you in the dirty cartoon?
I like.
Or are you going elsewhere?
You like me. I like me a dirty cartoon. Remember Pickles the dog? I watched many episodes of that with you.
Right.
I don't know if that was dirty as much as it was just
messed up.
It was called Pickles the dog, right? Something like
that.
Yeah. I think of all those things, that I'm a huge Marvel guy, so I am very excited about Wakanda Forever, although I know that there are some mitigating things. I'm hoping that they can, transition and, do a nice sort of spin-off and transition the Black Panther role. I'm also... I have to say I'm super keen on Andor. I think this. Probably one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time is Rogue One, especially after the original trilogy. It was just sad that those characters had to die.
Spoiler
alert! But I think it's some of the best world building and character building they've done. The trailer looks like a movie, so it just looks phenomenal. I mean, I don't want to get too hyped about it, but I'm really keen on watching that. So those are kind of the two things that stand out for me. If I was to pick a dark horse, I kind of want to see what Moon Girl and the Devil Dinosaur is all about. No, it's a Marvel character. It's more of a kid's show. They are trying to bring her in a little bit more into some mainstream Marvel stuff, but it's been a bit more of a niche character. It is definitely something that kids identify with. I like the idea of the character. It's very interesting. So
is this that's existing IP? Was there a comic?
It's an existing IP. There is a comic. They're so trying to bring her in. There's an Avengers Land in California in Disneyland, and there's actually reference to her in the Spider-Man ride. She's part of a collective of young, brilliant people in this ride. So the Spider-Man ride at Disneyland, or DCA, I should say. They're definitely trying to bring her in as a character. But there is existing. This isn't just brand new for this.
Gotcha. Well, it seems like part of an ongoing effort to broaden the audience base for the Marvel side of things, especially. We saw the Ms. Marvel series, which I enjoyed more than I expected to, and my wife Stephanie did as well. And if they're targeting some of these series to even younger audiences, and we're seeing that a bit with Star Trek Prodigy, the animated series there too, over on in that universe. So
this skews young for sure. This is even more than Miss Marvel. This skews
for sure,
young.
and apparently female too. So if that is an heretofore rather untapped market, then that's, I mean, looking at it through a capitalist lens, that's great for Marvel, right? If it, traditionally a lot of comic book based content has skewed male, at least audience wise and character wise too. So if you get some more representation there, and then you're going to get more fans, especially young, and those could be lifelong fans. So interesting to see those that trend continuing.
I do have to say though, Marvel, I mean, for its time, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously not by today's standards, but for its time, was very inclusive. Now, did they skew white male?
Well, it took
Absolutely.
a while to get there, right?
Yeah,
Like it took,
but I
yeah.
mean, they had Black Panther and what was it 1967 or something like that. They had a number of
Hmm.
characters of different religions and races all throughout. So I mean, they've tried to be inclusive. There was a strong male demographic in comic book fandom for many years, or that was the preconceived notion. So many heroes tended to be male, but that's definitely, the walls are coming down a bit on that. And Wonder Woman goes back to the 40s, so
Hmm.
it is, there have been
But there was a lot
characters
more
all throughout.
tokenism back there too,
Oh
right? It's like
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, Lois
most of the
Lane. I
kids,
mean, she was
yeah.
basically on railroad tracks or tied to the top of the Empire State Building for most of her life. She's only become a plucky reporter in the last 30 or 40 years. She dates back to the 30s or something like
For
that.
sure.
She saw her fair share of railroad tracks in her time before she got to be an independent woman who worked
Mhm.
for a newspaper. So, that, yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
I
One
would say
thing's
Marvel's always been somewhat
yeah.
inclusive, but they're definitely amping it up in the
Mm.
last
One thing's
decade
for
or
sure.
two.
I think we can all agree that our favorite superhero is the one and only Deja Custodi.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I was waiting for.
And so very quickly, I think Andor TV series on Disney Plus is probably my number one there. And if I had to choose a number two, it would be John Wick 4 with an asterisk, because I think, the first John Wick was amazing. And there's definitely been diminishing returns on the subsequent ones. I mean, they're doing different stuff. I think 3 had some really cool old repurposed Vic 20s as their anachronistic computer system stuff there. But I think if they're going back to this well, they really have to do something interesting to keep reinventing themselves, because otherwise it's just more of the same. So uh, I'm cautiously optimistic about John Wick 4, but definitely most excited about the Andor Disney Plus TV series. All right, moving on. Let's see here. We'll just leave a link in the show notes with some, for those who subscribe to HBO Max, and in Canada, a lot of these will be on Crave, which covers HBO. There's a bunch of classic sci-fi movies. If you haven't checked out or seen in a long time, that you can go and check, you can go have a look at, such as Terminator 2, Butterfly Effect, Stalker, Solaris. There's some good Russian stuff there. Cloverfield, classic. Ring of Barf
Love
Pegs.
Moon.
Yeah,
I love Moon.
Moon.
Very
Mhm.
underrated.
I, Robot, so Scanners was a classic if you like exploding heads. The Faculty, Super 8, which I love, J.J. Abrams, of course, Dune, Denis
Doing great.
Villeneuve's version, the original Westworld movie. I still haven't started watching season 4 of
Yeah.
the new Westworld TV series. And Ex Machina from Alex Garland, Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson, original Jurassic Park, Pacific Rim, which is Today We're Canceling the Apocalypse, Time Crimes, which is Spanish. I've not seen this,
What
so I
did
think
the
I'll check that one
apocalypse
out.
do? Why is it getting canceled?
Oh, because no one wants an apocalypse. It's a bad time. Source Code, which is a great under the radar one with Jake Gyllenhaal. Day After Tomorrow, Oblivion. There's lots of good ones here. Oblivion is great. Monsters, good low budget, but very well done. Of course, The Matrix, Blade Runner 2049, another Denis Villeneuve one. Colossal, which is sort of a kind of a sci-fi romantic comedy sort of thing. I enjoyed Tenet, Inception, so 2 Christopher Nolan movies in a row there. The Dead Zone. Wow, there's a lot. 2001: A Space Odyssey, Reminiscence, which I just saw a few months ago, wasn't bad. But from this list, I think the only one I haven't seen that I would like to check out is that Spanish one that I mentioned there, the Time Crimes. How about you, Tasha? You going to catch up on some sci-fi on HBO Max? Anything there that a favorite of yours from the past, or anything that you're curious about? Sci-fi curious?
It's just not my genre, man. I
So
No
guess I shouldn't
worries.
say that. That's not entirely, I mean, but no.
Okay, so let's put it this way: if you say you shouldn't say that, but do you have any favorite sci-fi movies that come to mind? Maybe ones that cross over a little bit more and aren't quite as hardcore.
I feel like because like the last movie I watched was Elvis, and before that, I don't even remember. I think it was like Wonder Woman 1984 like at
Mm-hmm.
home during COVID. Like I
Mm-hmm.
really don't watch a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
I like to binge through shows and stuff like that. So no, I mean
Hey,
it's
different
just
strokes.
I shouldn't say it's not my jam though, because really like Stranger Things is like, you know.
Yeah, son of sci-fi, fantasy, horror. I mean, and then
Yes.
Wonder Woman is a superhero movie, so
Yeah.
you're genre adjacent. Let's call it. Let's call it.
I dip my toe.
Okay, dabble.
I dabble.
Will, from this list of classic sci-fi movies available on HBO Max in the US, and much of which hopefully on Crave and other streaming services here in Canada, any jump out to you that you'd like to revisit or see for the first time?
Well, Moon was one that I
Mm-hmm.
liked a lot. I believe Monsters. I think I saw that with you. That was another great one. Those are two that really jump out for me. But there's a lot of classics in here. Super 8, the recent
Mm-hmm.
Dune. Yeah, all those. I think I can live the rest of my life happily without seeing Scanners again.
Oh, no, Scanners is great. It's a classic.
Cloverfield
That's
was
David
great, but I
Cronenberg.
don't know if I
Uh-huh.
want to watch it again.
J.J.
Yeah.
Abrams, yeah. Well, also, if there's again, I would love to go back and rewatch some of those, but again, there's so much new stuff,
Yeah.
movies or TV series. It's like there's no time. We need to all quit our jobs and just
Binge content all day.
yeah, and we could just do like Twitch streams or live streams like this one where we're just watching movies and riffing on them, and
Sounds
then
good.
we would all be broke. That's why we need
Reaction videos.
universal basic income. Another link that we'll leave in the show notes is, especially with all these movies and TV shows like scattered across all these freaking streaming services. There's some tips on how to save money on Netflix, Hulu in the States, HBO Max in the States, and more with this clever trick. So some of the tips they include in there include, some of the, I said include twice, whatever.
Yeah.
Things like pausing your service for a certain amount of time. Like I've done that in the past with, say, HBO in between past seasons of Game of Thrones. There are, as long as you're not watching too many shows at once on different services, you can like either cancel or straight up cancel, or some like Netflix will let you pause, and so you keep all your viewing history and your ratings and stuff like that. That's a great way to save a bit of cash. So there's some other tips there, some other things, account sharing and stuff like that. But have a look at this article, and we'll leave that in the show notes because it can get expensive, especially if you still are hanging on to your cable subscription, like those of us who are bad with money.
Mhm.
Another link that we're going to keep in the show notes for you, because it's kind of on theme, has to do with what do you do when you have an old TV that you need to get rid of. It depends on whether it's still working or not. In this is Momentous HQ here, I think we're at 7 TVs. There's 5 in operation and a couple of others that are going to be repurposed for other things. But of course, you always want to see who in your family might benefit from an upgrade of what you are disposing of. It still works and is better than what they have, especially if they need a second TV for a family room or for the kids or something like that. There's tips about lots of people sell stuff on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. Of course, you can donate to Goodwill, Salvation Army, or other charities and thrift stores. You can take, especially, and I would say like anything that's still working, try to find a new home for, as opposed to sending it to Recycling Depot, because recycling should ultimately be the last resort. Some places will accept stuff for free or for a charge, such as Best Buy. And if you can sell it, make a little bit of money. That's another option too, whether it's garage sale, flea market, yard sale, and as mentioned, Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. There's also there's that other app, Nextdoor. Some people buy and sell stuff on Nextdoor as well. So more tips there. Check it out. And then before we get into our picks and our projects this week, another little study we'll leave in the links about computers versus TV, which is less likely to promote dementia, because in both cases you're not moving around a whole lot. So some people will criticize those darn kids on the video games, blah blah blah. Previously it was those darn kids sitting around watching TV all the time. Before that it was those darn kids sitting around reading books all the time. So of these two more recent phenomena, if you had to guess, if you haven't checked out the article, Asia, what do you think is less likely to promote dementia, computers or TV?
Less likely?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say TV.
Oh, why do you think that?
Well, I know how kids are doing this and zoning out, and it's creating actually a lot of neck wrinkles in younger people. So people are getting wrinkles on their neck younger and younger now because of how we look at our devices.
And bad
So
posture.
I'm just going to base that, the physicality of the effects of having a screen right here. I don't know. I'm totally guessing only because TV has been around so long that I don't know. Am I wrong?
We'll see. What do you think, Will? Did you get a chance to look at the article? Are you cramming right now, or do you have?
I scanned it before. I didn't actually read the whole thing. Is it TV?
So
Less likely.
Will has the same guess as me.
I get your guess. So one of the key things in both of these is what of these can you do while remaining active? Because both are largely sedentary activities, and one, in either case, you're less likely to get dementia from those activities if you are integrating some sort of physical activity. So, for example, if you're watching TV while you're on a treadmill or an exercise bike, well, maybe less likely to get dementia. If you're simply watching TV sitting in your lazy boy, they figure, well, then computers are actually less likely to promote dementia, because when you're doing stuff on computers, depending on the type of activity on computers, like certain types of games and whatnot, you're actually keeping your brain more engaged. It's more of an active process as opposed to passive consumption of television. So there's nuances to studies like this, and read the article for more. But a lot of times, a lot of things that we're doing on computer, again, are we merely consuming on computers, consuming content, or are we doing things like playing certain types of games, or are we designing graphics? Are we making beats? Are we editing our YouTube videos? Those are the sort of things that keep your brain engaged and will help prevent the onset of dementia as well. With any of these things too, the social element is really important as well. So if you are watching shows and movies with friends, again, and then talking about those shows afterwards, less likely to get dementia. If you're playing games with friends, again, especially in person, online, there's a certain benefit, but especially in person, less likely to get dementia, because they say that having that social interaction stimulation is so important. But again, if you're isolated, solitary, on your couch or in your chair, simply consuming content, be it TV or YouTube or otherwise, it's not going to be great for your brain. So there you go. Do stuff with friends, and the more interactive, the better.
Move your body.
Move your body, especially, and ease off on the Doritos if you can.
Oh.
And the sugary drinks too. Sugar is not good maybe once in a while. And you know what, Will? Aspartame ain't great either.
I know. I want walking tacos. Is there any place in Vancouver that I can buy a walking taco? Do you guys know what that is?
I do not.
Google it.
Okay.
Fine. Well, how about that could be your pick for next week?
Okay.
All right.
I haven't had one, though. I have to have had one. I've never had one. I want one.
Okay. Well, we'll have to find them. Walk-in tacos. That's our homework. All right. So speaking of picks, Will, what is your pick of the week?
This is a complicated one. This is like an onion. It has layers. So I'm picking this because I've started using it maybe a couple weeks ago. It still needs to work itself out. I may have mentioned this before. I'm a huge soccer fan, and I've got a Premier League team that I follow, and I used to subscribe to something called DAZN. Sometimes people call it DAZN because of
the
its
wrong DAZN. Yeah.
Because of the logo. It's actually DAZN, which is not a great name either, but whatever.
No, it's terrible.
And so I have had to switch services because the Premier League license went to this other brand called Fubo. There are some problems with it for sure. It does not have an app on PlayStation, so I'm actually watching it through my computer or my iPad as right now, just because the way I have my devices set up. So usually I will watch it downstairs while my wife is sleeping because games are on at like 6 a.m. and she's not going to get up for a soccer game, which is totally fine.
I can relate.
And my cats sometimes don't get up. And so there's that problem. There's also some other issues with the way the streaming works and stuff because DAZN had its issues, but they had worked stuff out. So So far, I'm enjoying it, but it's partly because I just like the Premier League. I definitely think this app needs more effort and things worked out. People, there's also a bit of a backlash. People very upset about switching apps, just that the licenses are moving around. And I think you're seeing this a little bit, that some of these smaller, brands or streaming services can't maintain, these costs for sports rights and things like that. So I just hope that the MLS deal with Apple is a harbinger of things to come, and we're all going to concentrate on the big boys, and it's all going to be in the Googles and the Apples and all of that.
Be careful what you wish for.
I do wish for that, because I hate having 17 different streaming services.
Gotcha.
Just because I want to watch Premier League soccer on one, I'd rather have it as part of another.
We just need
thing that
Apple
I
to
already
buy
subscribe to.
MLS and Premier League Soccer and Disney and Paramount and
Yes.
and maybe Google can buy the other half, and then we'll only need like
Well,
two
but this is the thing. I
services.
already have 3. Do I need 4 or 5? Like, if the Premier League just joined something I already
Yeah.
had, which was, Apple Plus or Netflix or whatever, then I'd be okay with it, or Amazon Prime. But the fact that it's like one more thing, and it's basically to watch one thing, Premier League. So that for me is so I like it and I hate it.
Fair enough. Tasia, what's your pick of the week?
Speaking of real estate, my pick of the week is a YouTube channel called Never Too Small. I really don't know how I stumbled across this channel a while ago, but I did. It is all like micro apartments or tiny apartments, usually throughout like Europe or Asia. And they usually interview like either the architect and or design firm behind it, and they kind of tour you through the apartment and why they made the design choices they did and how they completely revamped the space. But like it's set to the most calming, zen, lovely meditation music. Like I don't even know what, like it shouldn't work, but it does. And I just find it so calming. Sometimes I'll have breakfast in the morning and just like watch a Never Too Small video, because it just is like a very much zen feel. And some places are just like trippy to look at and see like how they like made this 300 square foot place and how they live in it is always fun. So that's
My
my
wife
pick.
would love that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm addicted. I don't know what the music, like it shouldn't work, but it's just so calming and ethereal. And then they just like take you through the apartment. And then of course, I just love like pretending I lived there, or like how I would
mhm,
lay it out
mhm.
if I would have done it. Like I just love that kind of stuff. So that's my pick.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for everything in its place, living somewhat minimally.
No,
Yes.
Appeals to a little bit of the
no, all
OCD
the
where everything.
mixers everywhere. I need 17 mixers. I need them all at my
Ugh.
fingertips.
You need them each with their individual drawer. Will you can have your mixers, but then you can have them in individual custom cabinets for only $17,000 that you can have made for you, and beneath your staircase, of course. One of the things, and that looks like an amazing channel, but there's an interesting aspect to those things, like with tiny homes, van life, all of
Yeah,
that, is that the reality of living in those spaces,
yeah,
people will tell you, is much different than the perfect lives that they show you on
yeah.
those channels. And some of those channel creators will have a video once in a while saying, hey, just so you know, this is what it's actually like.
Yeah.
And on the van life channels, this is what it's like to empty your cartridge toilet in your nearby like sewer grate or whatever at the RV park, and all these sorts of things. This is what it's like. Yeah, this is what it's like to live in a tiny home with your spouse and 2 kids, and to hate each other after a month.
Yeah.
And so, as in terms of fantasy, it's great content,
Yeah.
especially if
Brett
it's got
wants to start a show called Tiny Home Big Divorce.
a
And we follow up on these couples
perfect. Yeah,
like months, years after they've moved in with their children and dogs into
yeah.
a
Look,
frickin' trailer, and you're
look.
like, Lord.
I'm gonna maybe turn it down a notch.
Oh,
You know that story of the van lifers, the guy who actually murdered his girlfriend,
Gabby
and you
Petito,
watch
yeah.
the clips. Cause sorry, Tristan, I took it there. You look at the clips, compared to what actually happened in the stories about them fighting and stuff like that, to Brett's point, is that for me it was really an interesting look into how YouTube distorts reality and how it only shows a certain angle. So sorry to suck the fun and humor out of the conversation, but it's like really like those people weren't what they were portraying on YouTube and Instagram and all that kind of stuff.
But that's why, that's like normally how things are, and like on Instagram's the same, but that's why this channel is, I think, another reason it's so refreshing is because it's rarely the actual homeowner they're talking to. They're talking to the architects, why it was designed the way they were designed. They talk a lot about sustainability and like when you're in cities and you need affordable housing for people, and like how people are really kind of trying to change the landscape. And the apartments range in sizes. So like I've seen ones that are even over 500 square feet, which I don't consider a tiny home. No. Like I lived in 350 square feet in Vancouver. Oh. So if I had 500, that would have been like, oh my God, like a dedicated,
I lived in 600,
like
so
yeah. So I do find it fascinating in terms of like that angle, and they don't portray, like.
Well, it sounds like, just, sorry, stop me if I'm wrong here. This show is more, I haven't seen it, so you can say this yes or no. Seems to be more about the house, where sometimes the tiny house stuff seems to be more about the people.
So, exactly. No, this is all about the space, and they show you the whole layout, and if it was redone, they show you what it was before, like the blueprints, and then they show you like how it was rearranged, why, because like you could have a completely different way that you would have arranged that apartment or wanted it, but it's if the person living there has a specific job or function, or they wanted a certain light coming from the ceiling because that's their light source. Like it's really cool to see like how they rework the spaces. They're also not cheap. Yeah. Like if you actually think about like a lot of this architecture that they're doing and stuff, and you're like, that would cost a pretty penny if you went to do that. So, but yeah, it's interesting.
Well, we'll have to check it out. And that is, what was it called again?
It's called Never Too Small.
Never Too Small. And lastly, my pick of the week is a movie that we talked about previously when the first trailer came out. And when Stephanie saw this trailer, she said, Nope. This is the final trailer that we're showing here. And this is Jordan Peele's third movie after Get Out and Us. Bit of a slightly, he's playing with genre a little bit here. This is more like a sci-fi / Western. We've seen others play with that genre a little bit, such as the that TV series Outer Range, which is out, which is current at the moment. But this features the actor, his name escapes me, that was in Get Out. And also has Stephen Yeun from the original Walking Dead series. I enjoyed it. It's definitely the kind of thing you see in the theater and you just like wonder, what is happening? It's nice to see a story based on original IP. So, it's not based on a book or a comic book or a reboot of a TV series or another movie. And it's just that a little bit of a mystery box and some sort of some design elements that we've never seen before in this sort of movie when it comes to perhaps some extraterrestrial life. If it's not a slasher horror or anything like that, and it's not like a super geeky hard sci-fi. It's definitely got some real world grounded elements to it, and it's a bit of an allegory as well, as with most of Jordan Peele's work. It's a little bit of commentary on society, and then there's some stuff and it's just like, what does that even mean? So I'd like to see it again because there's all sorts of layers to it and some neat elements. And of course, there's a little bit of some racial undertones too, which permeates his other works in usually larger degrees than what we're seeing here as an artist. He's African American, so that informs his work too. But see Nope in the theater if you can, and if you see it at home someday when it's on rental or streaming, please don't look at your phone. Just pay attention to the art on the screen in front of you. All right, projects this week. Will, you got anything for us? I didn't see a link.
No, there's something coming. It's been a big project. I think I previewed some part of it with you guys, and thank you so much for the comments. anyone watching will be like, what the hell is he talking about? Next week, I promise I'll show some stuff.
We're looking forward to it. The anticipation is killing us. Tasia, you've got another video for us because, like clockwork, gotta feed the YouTube algorithm.
Exactly. So this one, I did a bit of kind of like a follow-up. So this one's the best Google Keep tips, but for desktop. So a couple weeks back, or I don't even know when, a week back, 2 weeks back, I did Google Keep tips, but it was like mobile edition. So it was like for Android, iOS. So this one, I thought I would just follow up and talk about some tips that I use for Google Keep on desktop.
Do you want to refresh our audience of what exactly Google Keep is?
Yes, Google Keep is essentially like a note-taking app from Google. It is connected and intertwined with the Google ecosystem. So it's free. So you can do things like, set reminders as an example in your notes, which will automatically connect to your Google Calendar, which is really, really handy. But I don't want to give too much away. You'll have to watch it.
Yeah, it looks a lot more full-featured and visually oriented than, say, the Notes app in the Apple ecosystem on iOS, iPadOS, and macOS, which I use extensively. But this looks a lot more powerful. So if you're willing to give Google a chance, Google Keep, check out Tasia's latest video. Where can people find your latest video and all your work, Tasia?
You can head to youtube.com/TasiaCustodi or just TasiaCustodi.com. It's all there.
Beautiful. We nailed it. Wow, only 25 minutes longer than we had hoped. But that's okay.
Big one.
When Tasia's in the same time zone as us in the summertime, she's not in quite a rush to leave.
Not quite as tired.
And you were at the salon today, and that's why your hair looks so amazing. We're not going to spoil it, but you had hands-on with a new device we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Maybe you can share with us next week what that was about. And again, heads up, next week, we're aiming for Wednesday, the 7th of September, instead of normally we would be on Tuesday the 6th. I mean, in my perfect world, I'd do shows both days because we have such a big backlog of stories that we could do 2, even 3 shows a week. But, people have lives, except me, apparently. So
I have a life now?
Well, the pandemic's over, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can find out more about us at momentus.tv, facebook.com/momentus.tv, twitter.com/momentus.tv, instagram.com/momentus.tv, and on YouTube you can search my name and look for the Momentous playlist there. I was supposed to have our webpage finished that had all the links on it, but I kind of forgot about it because we've been busy with finishing vacations, but also like day job stuff and family stuff. And so maybe I'll get on that tonight and finish it up. I probably won't, but hopefully by next week it'll be there. Tasia, Will, thank you as always. We hope you and everyone else hope your week is truly momentous.
Oh, fail saw!